Hi everyone, I'm Dom from Solido. Today I'm going to take you through a few tips and things to be aware of when using Notion Calendar. So, what is Notion Calendar? Well, for those that don't know, a while back Notion bought Cron, which was a standalone calendar app. They've been working in the background since then to fully integrate Cron and Notion together to create a companion calendar app for Notion users. Cron has now been turned into Notion Calendar, and it was released a couple of weeks ago and people are going crazy over it. My initial thoughts are that it can be really good if you happen to tick a few key boxes. You need to use Gmail, as you can't sync it with other calendars like Outlook, for example, just yet. You also need to be a pretty heavy Notion user so that all your calendar entries come from a Notion database, if not your calendar. If you work in a team, they too would ideally be fully invested in Notion. Now, that's not a prerequisite to use Notion Calendar as an app, but to be able to use the full suite of features that they've created by going from Cron to Notion Calendar, that's obviously a huge prerequisite. If, though, like me, you meet those requirements, then great. Notion Calendar is probably a really good tool for you. The UI is excellent. As you can see, it's really clean and it has really helpful shortcuts. And as we'll see when we get into it, the ability to kind of easily differentiate between calendar entries, database entries, multiple databases is really, really nice. Now, let's get into the tips. One really cool thing is that you can create tasks and set the time of those tasks in Notion or in the calendar. So let's go into Notion and let's create a task here. So in Notion, as you're probably aware, you can set the date of a task, you can set it to cover multiple days, and you can include a time for those tasks. So let's say we just want it to happen on one day at 9 a.m. Great. And now if we switch over, we can see the task is here, but if we want to change the timing of that task, we can make it longer, we can move it to a different day, and you can do all of that within Notion Calendar. Typically, I move any tasks I want to do in a given week to the Monday of that week, so that when I go to plan on a Sunday, I can see all of the tasks in one place. So I'll just give you an idea of what that would look like. So as the week goes on, I add bunch of tasks. And then when I go to plan on a Sunday, all I have to do is take each of those tasks and put them in the different places in the week that I want to do them. And that's a really easy way to plan things. Not to mention, you can do all of this with the multiple databases. So if I click here, I can add tasks from my different databases. So I can add a task from this database if I want, by just going to create a new task and then changing the database. Next thing to note, though, is that while you can change the date and time as well as the title in Notion Calendar, you can't change any other properties. So what I think would be really cool, for example, is if the checkbox or status properties were in Notion Calendar, so we could tick them off. As things stand, though, to do that, you have to go back into Notion and change the property as you normally would. Sticking on the theme of properties, if you want to duplicate a database entry while keeping the properties exactly as they are, you'll want to do that in Notion. So just as an example, if we take this task here, so I've changed two properties and that has had a knock-on effect on a third property. And then let's say I want to change this to in progress. So if I go into Notion Calendar and I go to this task and I duplicate it, you can see that it's been duplicated, but it hasn't carried across the property changes that I just made a second ago. However, if I duplicate it within Notion, you can see that those changes have been carried across. And you'll also see that in the calendar, we can see all three of the tasks. So that can be a bit frustrating, but if you just keep it in mind and always carry out the duplications in Notion, then it shouldn't be an issue. But one thing you can see in the calendar, which is really helpful, is at a glance, the icon assigned to an entry. So as you can see, for each of these tasks, there's a little pencil icon. And if I go into Notion Calendar, you can see those pencil icons are there as well. Now, the significance of that for me is that I have a few different templates. So the default template is a task in this database, but I also have templates for different type of tasks. So for example, if I'm creating a video, I have a whole video template that is set up to help me create a video and make sure I don't miss any steps, and I use the right Canva templates and things like that. So if I go into Notion Calendar, I can see, without needing to look too carefully, that this task is a video because of the little video camera there. So that is actually surprisingly helpful. It's not something I would have paid much attention to initially until I kind of noticed it and realized that now it almost helps me plan my week more easily, because I can see what's a task and what's a video and what's a weekly review and all that kind of stuff. The final tip is that even for calendar entries that don't come from a Notion database, so let's just create one now, like this. Let's say it's a meeting. You can link this to a Notion page. So if someone puts in a meeting with you, for example, and there's some important documents you want them to see ahead of time or go through in the meeting, you can link any Notion page in your workspace to that meeting. And if they go into it, they'll be able to see it here, and you can add multiple. So that's really handy. Mainly I use this for meetings. I'm sure there are probably other use cases, maybe lectures, things like that. So that's just a few tips and tricks that I found using Notion Calendar for the last couple of weeks. If you have any other ones, though, add them to the comments. Thanks for watching.